let's talk about how to have hope that things can change at all. Well, I've got a silly example for you guys, but y'all, this is one of these examples in my life where I have seen God's hand in such a personal and specific way that you could not deny that God did it. All right, well, let me take you back to when I was about 23 years old. I moved to this little house that was backed up by the Harpeth River. So it was over in Bellevue, and it had a beautiful backyard that was fenced in. But then outside the fence, there was this steep hill down to the Harpeth River. Well, as soon as I moved to this house and I was renting it with some girlfriends, I saw the fact that the river was basically in the backyard. And I was like, I've got to get a canoe. I've always loved canoeing. I canoed growing up. I canoed at camp, and I thought, this is going to be so fun. I would love to get an old used canoe to keep at my house so I can canoe the Harpeth right out my backyard. Well, I reached out to my mom because I knew that she had a friend that worked for this canoe company. So I said, hey, Mom, would you ask your friend at this canoe company if he has like an old beat up canoe that I could buy used for, pretty cheap? I didn't have any money at the time, but I was like, I have got to get a canoe. Well, just a few days later, Mom shows up at my house with a canoe. She said he couldn't use it. It was kind of beat up. He's just going to give it to you for free. I was like, great. Now, granted, it had no seats. It had holes in the bottom, but it was yellow and it was mine and it was free. So I was so excited to get to have my own canoe. And y'all, I put so much time and effort into it. I built seats inside of it. I put this silicone on the bottom to try to patch all the holes, and I got it in decent shape where I could actually take it down the Harpeth. And that whole summer, I got to enjoy it. I went up and down the Harpeth River. I got to take my dog Jackson with me, take my friends canoeing, and it was so much fun. Well, there was one particular day at the end of the summer, and I was coming up from a canoe trip down the Harpeth, and I just was exhausted. Like, this hill was so steep, you actually needed like a rope to kind of help you climb up. And so I thought, I'm not gonna pull the canoe all the way up the hill and into my backyard and inside the fence. Everyone knows that this is kind of an extension of my yard. I'm just gonna pull it up on the hillside, flip it over, and I'll get it tomorrow. It was getting dark and I was tired, and I was like, it was really hard to carry it up the hill by myself. So I was like, I'll just leave it here, flip it over, pull it up far enough. Well, the next morning, I go outside and my canoe is gone. And y'all, I know this sounds so silly now as a grown woman, but I was truly devastated. I cried and cried and cried because I'd prayed for a canoe and asked Mom for a canoe, and God brought me this canoe. And yes, it was yellow and beat up and had holes and had no seats, but it was mine. It was something God gave me. It was something I had so many amazing memories in, and I was so sad that it was gone. Well, fast forward. A year goes by, I grieve my canoe. I'm not even gonna buy another one because I feel so guilty that I was irresponsible and left it outside the fence. I don't deserve a canoe. I obviously can't handle the responsibility of a canoe, so I just let it go. Well, about a year and a half later, I ended up moving to another house, but this house was on 40 acres and I was living at a farm. That farm just so happened to be surrounded on all sides except one by the same Harpeth River. And I thought, okay, I have paid my penance. It's time for another canoe. I have got literally the Harpeth River, my whole backyard again. I want to go canoeing again. Let me ask Mom if I can get another canoe, but this time I'll really pay for it. I promise I'll pay for it. Please, let me just see if I can buy another canoe because I've got to take advantage of this awesome Harpeth River. Well, even though I was so sad my yellow canoe had been gone, and even though I prayed so hard that I would find it, someone would be a good Samaritan, bring it back, it never happened. And when I asked Mom if I could buy another canoe, she said, I'll reach out. I'll help you get another one. Well, a few days later, my mom pulls down the old gravel drive of my farmhouse, and I was so excited because she told me she was bringing over another canoe, one that they couldn't use. Apparently they had a surplus of beat up canoes they couldn't use. But y'all, when she turned the corner and went parallel to my house, what I saw stopped me in my tracks. Sticking out of the back of her old Suburban was the Yellow Canoe. And I knew it was the Yellow Canoe because it had the same sticker and it had the same holes that I'd patched and it was the same seats that I had built. Y'all, God brought me back my original Yellow Canoe a year and a half later. Tears start streaming down my face. My mom was like, what are you doing? She had no idea it was the same one. Neither did the people at the canoe company. Apparently what had happened was the canoe owner's wife was driving down the street one day, saw that canoe propped up on someone's front porch, someone that had stolen my Yellow Canoe. She recognized the sticker and the logo as theirs, went up and told them, this is our canoe, I'm taking it back. She took it back to their shop and they just left it there, knowing it was theirs, but never making the connection that that was the canoe I had. that was the canoe they'd given to me. And a year and a half later, when mom reaches out and says, hey, do you have another canoe? My daughter, that's into canoe collecting, she needs another canoe. She's happy to pay for it. They said, oh, we got this old beat up one. It's got some pretty rough looking seats that someone built, but she can have this one. No one ever knew that was the same canoe, but I did. And as I sat on my front porch, I was blown away at how personal our God is, how our God cares about everything, the big things and the small things and everything in between. I love the quote by Elliott where she says, if you believe in a God that controls the big things, you must believe in a God that controls the small things. It is we, of course, to whom things seem big or small. So I don't know what you're worried about today, and I don't know what you've lost or what has been broken or wounded from your past, but I want you to know that our God is a God that heals. Our God is a God that restores. Our God is a God that cares about the big things and the small things. And just one day can change everything. One day of my mom showing up at my house with my old yellow canoe that I thought was gone forever. I didn't have to have that canoe. I could have gotten any canoe, but what a God wink that he has me and he sees me and he can bring things back to me. I had an interesting experience earlier this year that was a lot more personal than a canoe situation because it was a relationship. I was down in Florida with my husband, Matt, and we were sitting there eating at this outside restaurant and having burgers with my son, Carter. We were on this trip with him, taking Carter down to the beach. And out of nowhere, I picked up my phone. I don't know if you guys have ever done this where you do something that's almost this out-of-body experience and you're like, I don't actually know what I'm doing right now. I picked up my phone and I texted an old friend named Takia. Takia had been my roommate in college in Florida. She was my roommate my freshman year, and she was one of my best friends for the 10 years after college. We were so close, and I loved Kia so much. And over the years, we just lost touch. We lost touch so much that it became kind of to the point where you feel like, well, now it's been too long in between us talking. It's too awkward. What would I say if I reached out? And I would think of her from time to time, but I would never reach out. And for some reason on this day when I was in Florida where I knew she lived, where we had been roommates and she stayed after I moved back to Tennessee, I picked up my phone and I didn't even think. I plugged in her name and I just sent a text, hey, is this still your number? And what happened next was text after text after text between us, tears streaming down both of our faces of just like, how have you been? Man, I missed you. I'm so sorry we lost touch. I don't know what was different about that day that I decided to text her. I don't know what was different about that day from any other day over the last 5-7 years that we haven't spoken at all. But that day changed everything. That friendship was restored. That relationship I felt like was lost or just kind of life got too busy for is back. And now we talk all the time. And my friend is back. So whether it's an important relationship in your life that maybe a bridge has been burned and you don't know how to reach out, maybe it's a conversation you want to have, maybe it's an apology you need to make, maybe it's a canoe you need to pray for, maybe it's something silly or maybe it's something serious, but I just want you to know that our God is a God that restores. Our God cares about the big things and the small things and everything in between, and he can change anything.